Hello everyone, how are you doing? This is Daryl Guberman, CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, a quality consulting firm here in Connecticut. As of August, we've been open for 14 years. We have over 40 plus years in quality, aerospace, medical implants, printing, and plastic distribution, where we dealt with many industries. Today, this video is very important. It is how can the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland, Attorney General, investigate Boeing, who in 2009 was made an FAA regulator, and both are members on the American National Standards Institute, American National Crediting Board. How can that be? You know what they're going to do? They're going to paste over this. Well, Mr. Garland, your paste time has come to pass. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, there's a saying by Thomas Paine that I must illuminate you to. It is impossible to comprehend the moral mischief, if I may so express it, that mental lying has produced in our society. When a man or woman has so far corrupted and prostituted the chastity of their mind as to subscribe their professional beliefs to things they do not believe, they have prepared themselves a commission for every other crime. Mr. Garland, thank you for coming. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. ANSI is the American National Standards Institute, is a private, not-for-profit, non-governmental corporation that has both federal agencies and corporations on board. We are going to give you a taste because if we had to do a full-blown video, it would be about 30 or 40 minutes long. So you have ANAB, which sits on ANSI's board. In 2018, ANSI took over complete control over ANAB. Okay, in 2018, they are underwriters for the International Accreditation Forum in Delaware, which is a repository for national and international accreditation bodies. They are underwriters, means they took full legal responsibility. Just because they have the DOJ, DOD, FAA, Lockheed, Boeing on board does not mean that they are not liable for the disasters that happen within the manufacturing process. So the IAF is a repository for international and national accreditation bodies. They are also an underwriter for the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation. In 2015 to 2021, you have the factor that ANSI-ANAB sat on the IAF, which was handed over to a communist Chinese national, Zhao Jinwu, who's been involved with our quality since 1994. Zhao Jinwu at the time is also the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services in Beijing, China, which is equivalent in accreditation to ANAB. You will see in some pictures, I've had that, I don't want to do it here, I'm just going to tell you about it. In 2017, he was in Wuhan, China, giving a laboratory certification to, yes, the laboratory in Wuhan. Right. In 2018, a contingency from the United States went to Wuhan, China, where the scientists were begging them to have trained technicians. You also, on this side of the world, you have a Miss Pamela Sale, who was giving a deposition as the vice president of accreditation for a laboratory, and she said from one laboratory to another there were variances. How could the guy issue a certificate when this happens? Okay. The scientists of Wuhan were asking for, trained technicians. He handed the certificate without going through the whole process. You can see that. 2018, they're begging for trained technicians, and that guy Zhao Jinwu just handed them a certificate. I think it's for cash. You'll find out in this process. Watch. So Ms. Pamela Sale said, from one laboratory to another, there are variances and lack protocol. In 2019, in May, you can find it, there's a bulletin that came out from the CDC, a training document for no other than virology labs in China. And the only one mentioned in there is Wuhan, China. I think it is on page 3 where they said the most integral part of containment in a bio level 4 lab is highly trained technicians. That's the first part of defense, is to have those technicians trained properly, because you will very rarely have an escape. But we know different, don't we? In China, there are 10 different registrars that can issue an ANSI-ANAB accreditation. Now, you want to know about the underwriters. Underwriters are companies or what have you that take responsibility for people that are underneath them, so, like insurance companies do. Well, that's what ANSI and ANAB did for the IAF and ILAC. Here's an actual government contract from 2018. It's a standard operating work order. And this verifies without a shadow of a doubt that ANSI-ANAB are underwriters. And here is the actual document. It says ANSI-ANAB is an underwriter for the International Accreditation Forum. And the worst thing about it is the State Department invited China in because at that time in 2018, China controlled the IAF. Now we go on to Boeing. We go on to Boeing and hold on tight. At least you're on the ground. I'm glad I'm not doing this when we're in a plane or something. You have Boeing. Boeing sits on ANSI-ANAB's board. Boeing sits on ANSI-ANAB's board, and as I've showed you, since ANAB sits on there, they're sitting right over by their accreditation body that you're going to see that they shove down the throats of their suppliers. They are breaking the Sherman-Clinton Act, and it is absolutely horrendous for a monopoly. You'll find out that they are a monopoly because I'm competing against ANSI-ANAB as a private registrar. We are independent of this mess. In 2013, we gave a speech at the American Society for Quality where Dave Levy, a Region 3 director, said, "Daryl, we have no problem with what you're doing. In fact, ANAB supports you, sir." I didn't want their support. At that time, ASQ, American Society for Quality, which sat on ANSI's board, owned ANAB, American National Crediting Board, 50%. ANSI owned ANAB 50%. In 2016, a gentleman, Randy Doherty, who at one time was the vice president of ANAB, the chairman and principal on the IF tax report, and he handed over leadership of the IF in 2015. He was still at that time in 2016 when he wrote us the principal on the IAF tax form. That means he had control of the organization. He asked us to join either ANAB or IF or both, but I, as a proud American, and I knew what was going on, I said, no way. You have ANSI and ANAB that have the federal agencies and corporations on board sitting on the IF between 2015 and 2021, and all of those federal agencies got their information taken by no other than China. Zhao Jinwu had the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7, which demands espionage. So here you go. And here you go. You have the Department of Justice, which is looking into the door that failed. And look, they're sitting right over by Boeing. Do you think, do you think that any justice is going to happen? Hold on, let's get Garland, Merrick, right where he belongs. Don't they look like a sweet couple? Wow. Tender moment in a turbulent world. Anyway, in 2002, Boeing came out with this supplier bulletin. This supplier bulletin is very easy to understand. I'm going to show you in brief what this is. It's going to be down below in the description. You can find it in the featured articles about Boeing's supplier bulletin. In 2002, this is what it said. If you are AS9100 certified, okay, which is for aerospace, you send in your certificate as long as it's ANSI-ANAB accredited, thus keeping a hand over here by me, keeping me out of the system. What's the difference between my cert and their cert? I support my customers. All these guys do is take their money. That's it. And I can prove it. So it's not defaming. It's actually telling the truth. So they said, send in your certificate, ANSI-ANAB accredited, and send us your parts. And Boeing doesn't have to ship anybody out there to see your facility. So those parts can be made in a swamp, made in the Grand Canyon, made on the moon. Nobody knows. In fact, they say they can't even find the paperwork for the door that popped off the Alaskan Air. And that goes against all of ANSI's process. I'm not an ANSI process, all of the ISO processes and AS processes. The most important part when you're dealing with aerospace is traceability, and they can't find the paperwork. So how in good conscience can ANSI-ANAB issue a quality certificate to Boeing even, and they sit on the board, okay? They put it in the porthole, you'll see it. Here it is. So here we go. In 2009, don't listen to anybody. This is the actual article. I know it might be too small for you to read it, but this is the actual article, okay, that came out that stated that Boeing was made an FAA a regulator by the FAA in 2009. That means when you hear about MCAS systems failure and all this other mess, Boeing and how Boeing hoodwinked the FAA, they didn't hoodwink it. They are the FAA. And just like the NTSB is trying to get information from them. And where is she? Here she is. Jennifer, dear old Jennifer. Jennifer's trying to get information from Boeing, and Boeing doesn't have to because they're an FAA regulator. Actually, in 2000, when he took over as CEO, he's also an FAA administrator. On Boeing supplier portal, here you go, ANSI-ANAB. Remember, on their supplier bulletin, ANSI-ANAB. On their supplier portal, ANSI-ANAB. On top of it, they sit on the, not only the board of directors of ANSI-ANAB, but they sit on the ANAB Management System Accreditation Council, which grants, suspends, and withdraws accreditation of certification bodies, which is registrars. If the registrar sucks, they kick them out, they take the certificate away. Here is the Federal Aviation Administration sitting on ANSI right over by Boeing. This is a good one. I had to bring him out. The FBI, we have Mr. Christopher Wray here. Mr. Christopher Wray, who says on many deliberations about China and the United States, he says, the whole of the Chinese society is a threat to the United States and that Americans must step up to defend themselves. Well, here's a real good thing. Here's an actual contract between ANAB and the ANSI-ANAB and the IAF, a signed contract. Okay, you have that. In fact, this FBI lab in Washington got their certificate taken away because of improprieties in laboratory technology. Okay, there it is. So we actually turn this around, and here's the real Christopher Wray. Will the real Christopher Wray real stand up? Exactly. Every time he gives a deliberation, he talks about TikTok, he talks about China, we must maintain vigilance, as you see, that's an actual quote. He shouldn't be released from his duty. Maybe he's Chinese, I don't know. And then you, of course, have the Department of Justice again. The Department of Justice sitting, right, over by all of these people. Over by Boeing, over by the FBI, over by all of them. Mr. Garland, oh my God, it's unbelievable. You have the Department of Transportation. The Department of Defense. And that's what you have. My telephone number is 203-556-1493 or Daryl, DARYL, @yahoo.com. Do you really think that the DOJ is going to do anything? They're in bed together. David Calhoun, Boeing sits on ANSI. You have the Department of Justice sitting on ANSI. So they must be, we ought to put a little tiny Valentine's Day. What is it? It's now March, but for Valentine's Day, we should put a little tiny cherub there shooting an arrow right at David Calhoun and Daryl Merrick Garland on the DOJ. And nothing's going to come of it, ladies and gentlemen. They may fine them and all the rest of this mess, but nothing's going to come of this. They want you to see government in action. Or inaction. By the way, have you ever seen one agency talk to another? So when Boeing is holding back information about that door popping, which I heard they can't find the documentation, and that blows a hole in every AS9100 certificate that is dispensed by the American National Standards Institute and the American National Accreditation Board. Traceability is critical when it comes to aerospace, and how in good conscience could they give a certificate? Okay, how could they give a certificate of approval? Well, you know, you saw with Zhao Junwu in Wuhan, China. He gave a certificate, though the scientists there were basically crying about not having well-trained technicians. So it's a money operation. It is a money operation where ANSI and ANAB have failed. Not only you who are certified by them, but for Boeing, who has a grip on them and breaking the Sherman-Clayton Act. 203-556-1493 or Daryl, DAROL, TQRS @yahoo.com. I thank you.